Hello and welcome to Did You Know Gaming Extra. In today's episode, we'll be exploring more trivia from one of Sega's most beloved consoles, the SEGA Genesis, also known as the Mega Drive. We all know that Sega's success was helped in no small part by the creation of their iconic mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog. However, one iconic character from the series wasn't initially planned. After the first game on the console became a smash hit, Sega unsurprisingly requested a sequel from the original team. One of the fundamental elements that developer Yuji Naka wanted to be included was some form of multiplayer. Originally conceived as a competitive racing mode, it eventually evolved into what they referred to as a 1.5-player co-op mode too. For this edition, the team needed to come up with a new character, eventually resulting in the creation of Tails Miles Prower. However, to begin with, this character was not a fox, but a tanuki, otherwise known as a Japanese raccoon dog. The initial designs were based on a UFO catcher plush doll, but the design was too clumsy. The decision to change the second character's species was made due to Nintendo having close ties to the tanuki at the time, with tanukis appearing in Super Mario Bros. 3 as a power-up for Mario. To give this fox character more personality, a second tail was added. Making a character for any game can take time, and while most companies follow standard practices when including characters they don't own the rights to, this isn't always the case. This process can sometimes be overlooked, causing problems for companies. Sega referenced characters from other media in their initial release of Revenge of Shinobi, with one boss fight featuring SpiderMan, who, after enough damage, would transform into Batman. The boss fight is implied to be against a ninja capable of shape-shifting, not the actual characters. After this initial publication of the game, a revision was made and released again as version 1.01, this time altering the appearance of Batman into a demon with wings, with a close resemblance to the titular character from the manga series Devilman. This wouldn't be the only revision made, however. Revision 1.02 changed Spider-Man's appearance to more closely resemble the character, and included a copyright notice for Marvel Entertainment after Sega obtained a license to the character for other titles on the console. This change also altered the fight so that, upon being defeated, Spider-Man wouldn't shapeshift. He would flee instead, implying he was the actual character and no longer a shapeshifter. After the license for the character expired, another version was made for the Wii Virtual Console. This version changed Spider-Man to have a pink costume instead, making him a totally different and unique character. This 1.04 version is now used for all re-releases of the title. The reason for Spider-Man's original appearance in the game was explained by Noriyoshi Oba, who said Sega had already acquired copyright permission for the Spider-Man arcade game they were developing. We were actually asked by Sega to include Spider-Man as part of the promotional effort for that game. In that case, we were actually told to make him look more like Spider-Man. Other characters were also altered in these subsequent versions. In the game's initial release, enemies with flamethrowers were named Rocky in the Japanese manual, and took on the appearance of Rambo, two characters portrayed by Sylvester Stallone. After the first update, their design was changed to feature sunglasses and male pattern baldness. The boss of Round 7 was also changed, with the original release being a representation of Godzilla until it was changed in Revision 3 to simply remove his skin. Speaking of legal changes, one title released by Sega had the license changed after creative differences between then Sega Studio Camelot and Climax Entertainment. Landstalker, The Treasures of King Knoll, wasn't initially created as a new property, and was actually intended to be the third entry in the Shining Force franchise, before Shining Force 2 under the name Shining Rogue. Fans of Shining Force have noted that many references to Shining Force can be found throughout the Landstalker series, such as Yogurt's Ring making an appearance in the Dreamcast sequel, Time Stalkers. Going back to Landstalker, there's actually a scene which was cut from international releases. At one point in the game, it's possible to stumble across Kayla enjoying a nice, relaxing bath, before she offers Nigel the opportunity to join her. Though given the option to say yes, Friday will prevent the player from doing so. While this scene was cut during localization, the scene was still translated in the game's code. but was impossible to encounter due to a maid being placed in the bathroom's doorway. By removing the character in the game's code, or by way of a cheat device, it's possible to still gain access and sneak a quick peek. Sound effects are another important part of any good title, though their creation and implementation are often overlooked. With Sega's Golden Axe, it appears that those in charge of creating the death sounds took inspiration from classic 1980s action films. In the Mega Drive version, one of the death cries is actually just a digitized version of a scream from Conan the Barbarian. It wouldn't just be first-party Sega games found to be lifting content from strange places. Metal Fangs, by Victor Musical Industries, was released exclusively in Japan, following a group of cyberpunk-style races. Hardcore Gaming 101 has uncovered a major inspiration for many of the game's characters: the music industry. Many portraits were simply traced from photos of iconic musicians, and given the cybernetic treatment. Some of these may be speculation, but the website suggests the images include Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols, Madonna, David Bowie, Angus Young of AC/DC, MC Hammer, Robert Smith from The Cure, Morrissey, and Adam Horovitz from the Beastie Boys. Another game on the system with an interesting musical reference, amongst other things, is Contra Hardcore. This music reference appears in a secret ending found during Stage 3, after talking to a man on top of a climbable wall. The man offers the player a chance to participate within the battle arena, where the player will enjoy a remix of Vampire Killer from Konami's other series, Castlevania. Here, 3 bosses must be defeated. They include a disco robot who, after being defeated, will explode into fish pastries, a robot zombie dinosaur pushing a carriage holding a machine gun with a large slime monster inside, and a robot brain which can warp around the room. After defeating these bosses, the player is sucked into a magical portal and sent back in time to the age of dinosaurs. Several years after, the player finds themselves as the king of monkeys, before the game's credits roll. Another Mega Drive game which makes reference to another game on the system is Ranger X. In the game's Japanese release, there's a secret easy difficulty mode that can be unlocked by going to the options screen and inputting ABC, ABC, ABC. Not only does the whole game become significantly easier, but an additional stage is added prior to level 1, which differs from the title's usual dark and moody tones to a more light-hearted parody of several Sega titles like Alex Kidd and Sonic the Hedgehog. Another interesting, and slightly bizarre cheat, comes from the Genesis release of ESPN National Hockey Night. The game contains a cheat that strips the game down to a one-on-one game of Pong. This can be done by entering B, C, 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 up, down on the main menu. However, the original aesthetic of the classic Pong isn't present. The puck does remain the same, but the paddles have been replaced by 2 hockey players. If this still resembles Pong just a little bit too much, the player can enter an additional code on the main menu, ACB, up, right, and up, to replace the puck with an octopus for some reason. Phantasy Star 2, the sequel to the Master System classic, has an interesting regional difference. Ustvestia, a piano teacher found in the northwest outskirts of Oputa, will play music for the party, acting as a sound test board so players can listen to the game's soundtrack. He's also capable of teaching the music technique to anyone in the party. In the game's English version, if a male party member wants to learn the skill, Ustvestia will state he looks smart, and gives the character a reduced fee of 2,000 compared to the 5,000 he charges for female characters. The Japanese version of the game reveals the reason for this gender disparity. Ustvestia will instead state he looks cute and is openly homosexual. This was altered for the game's English release, possibly to avoid contention from players who find the image of 2 men having steamy, passionate coitus uncomfortable. And now it's time for this episode's random piece of trivia. Today, we'll be exploring the first release of Duke Nukem. While the game was initially released with Duke's surname as Nukem, the game's version 2.0 release changed the spelling of this name to Nukem with a U. The change was made after Apogee, the game's developer, became concerned about the copyright of the name Duke Nukem. So, when the 2.0 version of the original Duke Nukem released, the name was altered to avoid legal issues. The character they thought might cause problems was also called Duke Nukem, the eco-villain and radioactive mutant from the beloved cartoon series Captain Planet and the Planeteers. However, when programming Duke Nukem 2, they came to the conclusion that there was no copyright over the name, and so the original name was reinstated. Thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Did You Know Gaming Extra. As always, I feel a necessity to send my love to the patrons, because of course I must, but I also just wish to do so. They are wonderful people. You're wonderful, even if you don't give on Patreon. I think, deep down, there's a part of us that's just generally squishy and lovely, just above the cockles, some might say. Possibly around the coccyx, the cockles, the coccyx. There's a certain area of the body, at least, where I believe we're all a little bit squishy and lovely.